Call the meeting to order. Have a roll call.
Mr. Ortega, Mr. Anderson, Mr. McFadden,
Here.
Mr. Alsop,
Here.
Mr. Nunez,
Here.
Mr. Perez,
Here.
Mr. Zendejas,
Here.
Mr. Blum, Ms. Franklin, Mr. McNicky, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Ramos,
Here.
Ms. Ramos-Watson,
Present.
Ms. Broughton, Ms. Soleil,
Here.
Mr. Bayard. Thank you.
We're one member short. He's on the way, I understand, so we'll run a little bit late. And I think the lady next to me is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, where are we? Where's the agenda?
I'd like to welcome a couple of our guests, especially Mr. Menville, Director, and Director-elect, Mr. Desert. Glad to see you here. Hope we see you a few more times around. And welcome all of you here. Most of you look like you might be from ID. I've seen a face or two before. But glad you're here. Has everyone read the minutes? Hear a motion to approve?
I so move. Second.
Been moved and second. Any comments?
Do we have a quorum?
Oh, we can't vote on him then.
Can we approve minutes?
Oh, you're right, we can't until he gets here.
Just table them temporarily.
We'll table them temporarily and we'll come back to those later, Miriam. Trying to tell you. This is a public meeting. This is the time and the place for comments. At this time, you may be heard on any item not listed on the agenda. Those who wish to address the committee should come to the microphone, state your name and address for the records. The chair recommends that you limit your time to 3 minutes, and the total time of the period is for 10 minutes. Anyone? Okay, we'll move on. Down to number 4. Valencia? Valenzuela? Oh, thank you. Sorry, apologize.
Good evening, ECAC members. I'm Belen Valenzuela. I'm the risk manager. I actually report to the chief financial officer, and I kind of provide independent oversight over the purchase power, the natural gas purchases. So I'm up here today to kind of speak about the energy risk management policy that the Imperial Irrigation District has. Just to kind of give you an overview, the first energy risk management policy was put into place in 2002. It's been revised, I think in 2005 was the major revision, and then again in 2009. So, and then again it was looked at, and then it was looked at by 2 outside agencies at the end of 2009 to issue an opinion on it. So what I'm going to go through is our current risk policy and just kind of give you an overview and a summary of it. And if there's any questions, please ask. So the main drivers of the energy risk management policy is a stabilization of electric rates through budget certainty. anytime you deal with the energy or a natural gas commodity, you're at risk for market variances. So basically what the policy does is to try to the main driver is to stabilize electric rates through budget certainty. And so throughout the policy, there's certain variance criteria that are set that the Energy Department has to meet in order to be in compliance with that policy. Then the second, well, I shouldn't say second, the other drivers were a least cost power supply portfolio. So what that means is for the Energy Department to look at the least cost type of scenarios for that purchase power and natural gas portfolio. But by all means, it's not the number one driver. The number one driver is stabilization of electric rates. And then the other thing is to meet the Western Electrical Coordinating Council's requirements as a balancing authority. I mean, like one of the big things is they have to show that they have 15% of the energy requirements in reserve. There's big requirements that they have to meet as a balancing authority in order to keep that recognition. And then, of course, to maximize revenues from sales of surplus energy. Now, as I was saying, when you're dealing with the natural gas or the purchase power commodity, there's inherent risks that are with that, as the variance in the market and caused from environmental market and things like that. So one of the big things is that the policy does is it created an energy risk management group to provide managerial oversight, meaning to make sure this policy is adhered to. And there are two different types of members that meet that group up. And if you go to, I think it's on page 6 in your appendix, you can kind of see the titles. But basically, you have a voting group and you have a non-voting group. The voting group consists of 5 members. It's your chief financial officer, your assistant general manager of the Energy Department, your, I got to remember all these, your controller of the Energy Department, and your chief administrative officer and the manager of the operations and infrastructure of the Energy Department. And then, of course, your non-voting members are your risk manager, your manager of the Energy Department, resource planning, the one that's actually doing the transactions, and also your assistant energy manager of the supply and trading. And then there's also legal counsel there to kind of tame the group down. So anyways, as I was saying, and so throughout this policy, though, when you read it, it also gives a proper segregation of duties, meaning that your traders out there that are purchasing the energy and the natural gas, they're not the same ones, for instance, that are authorizing the invoices, to be paid. There's also budget at risk variances set in that policy. And in the appendix, if you go, I think it's on page 8, I kind of give you an overview of what they are. Basically, what that policy does is it kind of looks over the next 3 years in advance. So that Energy Department of Resource Planning needs to be within 5% variance of the budget a month ahead, 10% within a year ahead, 20% within 2 years, and 30% within 36 months. So he's got to be constantly looking at that budget and making sure that he's staying within those guidelines, or there will be an exception to the policy. Also, there's, authorization transaction limits and transaction types that are within the policy. For instance, your Energy Department manager has authorization to go out and lock up 24 months worth of a trade and has a $4 million cap on that. Okay, anything over 24 months, he'd have to get the assistant general manager's approval for that. Now, your assistant general manager can go up to 36 months and et cetera. I think your general manager, he can go up to actually 60 months, but any trade that's over 36 months must go to the board of directors. So I know that's a lot of information, but I also put that in the appendices so you can kind of see that, what their authorization limits are. Also within that policy, there's counterparty control limits, meaning they just cannot go out and just trade with anybody. We have some pretty stringent counterparty credit limits set in there, so just so that just because they make a trade, if they made it with a counterpart that was not completely solvent, then there could be repercussions later on. For instance, if they made a trade and then that party became bankrupt and the market risen up, the district could be exposed to that market variance. And also part of that policy requires that some risk management reporting, meaning I have to go, in fact, tomorrow night, I have to go to the board on a quarterly basis and report to the board. I think there's like 6 different reports. They're on page 3. One is a summary of the energy risk management meetings for that quarter. So I report to the board how often the risk management group met during that quarter and kind of give them an update on what the subjects were that they met on. Also show them a variance report of actual purchase power and natural gas, what the budget to what the actual expense was, meaning they take what the resource planning group budgeted for it, and then I actually show the board kind of where they're at coming at actual, and I do a forecast based on what market prices are doing, and let the board know whether they're going to be in or out of those tolerance levels. There's also a summary of a power strategy sheet. What that means is that's kind of a summary that gives the board, lets them know what the capacity requirements are, the forecasted capacity requirements are, the forecasted energy requirements are, and the natural gas. And it shows how much supply and trading that's the old title, the resource planning has purchased for that. So it lets them know if, we're greatly exposed, if we're not that exposed, so they have an idea of how much of it is purchased. I mean, one of our big risks is like, say, month of July or August, on our peaking months, you want to make sure that all of our requirements are purchased in advance so that we're not out there on a day that we're peaking, scrambling, paying, top dollar for energy. So the other thing is the summary of an energy and natural gas portfolio. So what that does is that tells them how much of the budget for natural gas and purchased in energy is been fixed. So they kind of know, okay, well, we know that 70% of the budget's been fixed. That's kind of what we shoot for natural gas, and the other 30% is open to the market. Another report is any energy or gas transactions that exceed 36 months. And basically, really, in theory, by the time I go to the board and I report this, they should have already seen those transactions. Because like I said, the policy addresses that any transaction that exceeds 36 months must go to the board first, to let them for their review. The other thing is a compliance report I issue on a quarterly basis, showing that either if they've not been in compliance with the policy, I let the board know that. So now, also, I kind of mentioned we really redid the policy was really redone in November. I think in last part of 2008 is when we really started. And what we kind of did, we changed it a lot more towards budget variances in order to get that stabilization of rates, putting actual controls in there of what type of those budget variances that the resource planning had to stay within, and also the transactions that they could actually do. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Mrs. Belen, Ms. Valenzuela, is this process more or less guaranteed that what occurred several years ago won't occur again? Somebody buying almost 100% for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, yes, there would definitely be some red flags. For instance, if they would, lock in all of us, well, for one thing, like if they would have locked in 24 months of gas in 3 days, that's going to show up. That's going to exceed some managers' authorization limits. That's going to have to go to, for instance, I would see it from the finance point of view. So there'd be a lot of people involved versus just that resource planning. So, and also with a budget, with there being set a budget amount, it would throw them over the budget amount. So yes, this has definitely put some controls in place where there'd be some red flags go off.
Well, why don't you walk them through the whole process with the forecast, the power strategy sheet, how you approve each transaction.
Okay, your resource planning group, they basically come up with a forecast. Remember I mentioned there's capacity, energy, and natural gas. They come up with a forecast for that, and they have to come up with a 36-month forecast. And with that's put on a power strategy sheet, okay? And so in order for them to make a transaction, to go out there and do a trade, what they have to do, they can just not go off and do a trade. They have to not only get the manager's approval on it, but then it is sent over to me as the risk manager. Remember I mentioned the segregation of duties? That's where I report to the chief financial officer. So what I do is I get that transaction that they're proposing, and I make sure that it is within what they forecasted, making sure they aren't buying too much, and making sure they don't buy too much. That's according to that power strategy sheet. Making sure that it's within their limits, and making sure it's within their transaction type. And I also do a counterparty overview of it to make sure that the counterparty is credit established. And then at that point, I sign off on it. So the traders cannot actually make a term trade, without the Energy Department manager of resource planning signature and my signature on it. And at times, like I said, if it exceeds 24 months, they cannot do it without the assistant general manager's signature on it, all 3 signatures on it. Should I go into more? Am I missing anything? Does that? So there's a lot of people looking at it now. Before, I guess the traders before, they were making the trades on themselves. There was at times not necessarily managers signing off on it. Now you've got at least 2 managers signing off on the trade before they can make the transaction.
Nothing is a matter of life and death. They say, I need that signature right away to buy this thing or this lot or whatever it is, this quantity. So you have to sign off right away, kind of putting you in a spot.
Well, I don't let them put me on a spot. You can ask Dave. No, that's what's kind of good about having that independent review. I do try to get it back to them because you don't want market to shift, but I do take the time and make sure that it's within their authorization, their limits and levels, and I make sure that they aren't purchasing too much. And so, and if I ever have a concern, I bring my concerns up to the chief financial officer and the AGM.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I notice you have, coming up an exception report or reporting exceptions. Have there been that many of them in the last few years?
No, we've only actually had one. That's it. So we've not had many.
It was a minor one.
But he almost made another one, but I warned him before. So
He got promoted, it doesn't matter.
no, actually it was after he was promoted, it mattered a lot to him. He made sure he corrected it before, so. Is there any other questions?
Any questions by anyone?
Does this new system handicap you in any way? Anything.
No, ma'am. Resource planning, if it's done correctly, we should have a portfolio. And what Belinda hasn't gone into is this starts not this month. So here we are in the month of December. This would begin in January. Anything that's done during this month, the prompt month, is done by the real-time or day-ahead traders. They can basically do what they need to do to maintain the stability of the system and day-by-day trades, but they're not really limited on what they can do on a day-by-day basis. But for the resource planning side, we should never be in a situation where we have to react. You're dealing from 2 months to 36 months out, and generally by the time we get into it, most of the transactions that we're making today are for 2012, 2013, and hopefully 2014.
So you're not going to be in a desperation situation?
No, ma'am. We should not be. Resource planning should be a very calm, controlled trading environment that does not require scrambling. It doesn't mean that the people who are dealing it on a day-to-day basis, but the work that the resource planning group working out 24 to 36 months should never be in a situation where you have to respond right now, give it to me. Prices just aren't that sensitive that far out.
Okay, any other questions?
Any other questions?
Oh, I did want to mention one thing to the committee. I kind of mentioned it here, but the policy was reviewed by our external auditors, Moss and Adams, our financial auditors, and also by Risk Management Incorporated. And they came back and said that, basically it exceeded the industry standards. And so it got their blessing in that sense. So,
Okay, thank you, Belen.
thank you.
We're still a member short, are we not, Miriam?
I just spoke to Mr. Anderson, and he is going to be detained at work, so he will not be able to make it.
Okay, then I guess we'll need to go back up and item number 2, defer it until the minutes, until our next regular meeting. And this will be a meeting of information rather than a voting meeting.
Chair. Clay, how does that affect the election of officers?
You can elect them.
It doesn't happen, right?
Yeah. You gotta have a quorum.
Another month.
Yeah, that would be right.
You're for another month.
I got a quorum next time. All right, anyway. Mr. Booking, I guess, would be up next with their budget. And while he's coming to the mic, I'd like to say that the subcommittee met with the subcommittee members from La Quinta and Imperial, and we did the telecommunicating, and it changed my mind. I had reserves about it, but I think that'll work. That'll be great, it seems like. So any of you that didn't see that or there, I think it'll work out. Your stand.
Thank you. Good evening. Mr. Broken is not here, so I'll be discussing this in his place. My name's Ed Hall, Deputy Manager, Financial Services. As you mentioned, about a month ago, I presented a high-level overview of the 2011 budget. And since then, as you mentioned, I believe the Budget Review Subcommittee met, I think it was last week, with several members from the Energy Department. And I believe a lot of questions were answered. So I'm here this evening just to see if there are any additional questions you'd like to have answered and in preparation for making your recommendation to the board.
Let's start on the one end or another and go around with each individual member.
He must
You want to start it out, Lupe?
Hi, everyone. I was the chair of the subcommittee meeting, and what we did is the Imperial Valley members attended the budget study session here for the board, and the Coachella Valley members went to the La Quinta meeting of the board on the budget study session. I think Mr. McFadden went to both of them. But the purpose of this meeting tonight is not to move forward with any recommendation. Obviously, we don't have a quorum, so we couldn't do that anyway. But we wanted to share with you the information that we gathered in our, not only in our being present at the study sessions, but in the meeting that we had last week as a group via teleconference, and that worked very well. Thank you, staff. We sat down together and we had our little budget books, and we had a list of questions that we brought to the meeting. Mr. Alsop was there, Mr. Blum, Mr. McFadden, Mr. Ortega, Mr. Perez, and myself, along with some staff members. We took a look at some different areas that we wanted to start out as our foundation and make sure that we all had the same information before we move forward in evaluating this proposed budget. We asked questions related to future planning, to funding, to rates, the reserves, and also about the renewable portfolio standards and greenhouse gas legislation. And in the area of funding, the subcommittee was briefed, and we understand the short-term challenges facing the district, which we will be overcoming before we can make long-term funding securitization. The items that we had some additional comments and concerns on that we wanted to bring forward are in a draft staff report that I think is at your desk. It says draft on it. And we wanted to highlight these areas because we wanted to make sure that the whole committee knew that we really did ask some in-depth questions of staff to make sure that we understood the plan in this budget cycle. With respect to the capital projects, we were pleased with the recently implemented priority system for the capital projects, and we encouraged IID to avoid deferment of projects as a means to save money. Furthermore, we supported staff's realistic approach to queuing the projects to ensure targets can be met throughout the year rather than to have a pie-in-the-sky approach and not being realistic about it. So we were very pleased with the capital projects presentation. As far as the rates were concerned, we always value IID's efforts in keeping electric rates low for our consumers. However, we as a committee, especially those of us in La Quinta, wanted to caution that artificially keeping rates low can sometimes have a negative impact on the organization's reliability. And for us, that's scary because our neighboring electric company is Southern California Edison, and we don't want to go that way. We want to make sure that IID is strong and that we're able to support our future needs through IID. So that was a very important conversation for those of us in Coachella Valley. The committee stressed the importance of funding the ongoing maintenance programs versus deferring the costs. Reserves, we did ask questions with respect to reserves. We wanted to be informed and educated on what the board's policy was on reserves. And the finance department did bring together another little chart that you have in front of you. It's very small, but it talks about what the policy requirement is from the board and what our balance as an organization is at the end of September. And pretty much we're in line or getting there with what the board has established as our policies. So we just wanted to make sure that we had that information to share with you so that you could see that we are looking at our budget not only for current operation and capital needs, but also for long-term plannings with respect to reserves. We talked about staffing because we recognize that there's been some changes and that there will continue to be some changes as we further refine our staffing for greater efficiency in the organization. But we also cautioned that staff that we wanted to make sure that we didn't rely heavily on outside consultants. And we truly did see a value in the executive management intern program and recommended its implementation. However, we expressed and stressed the importance of equality and diversity in recruiting and having true representation. More women.
Okay.
That's not where he was going with that, but I thought I'd throw that in.
Argue, I'm not crazy.
No, in all seriousness, we do want to see equality and diversity throughout the staffing levels. Community outreach. This, again, is not something that's specifically addressed in the budget, but it's something that we feel that we would like to recommend to the board that they kind of focus in on. I think we do a lot of great work here at IID. I think staff does a lot of great work here. I think we really need to go out in the community and toot our horn and let the community know what we're doing, not only how we are running the organization, but how we are looking out toward our future needs as an electric company. So we recommend that the board consider having a community outreach program where they're involved in face-to-face contact with the community, where we can share information with the public, including our fiscal profile and where we're moving and what is important to us as energy consumers, the greenhouse emissions regulations and how we are going to be able to support those financially through the organization. So we just feel that now is the time for IID board members to really put into play a campaign because we realize, in 5 years from now when these regulations and everything is having to be met and the costs start to escalate a little bit, the consumers, if we don't start educating them today, they're going to get a little freaky on us and not really like it. So we're hoping that we can get ahead of the curve and start educating the public on that. There was one last sheet that was given out this evening, which is this long one. And it shows the budget comparisons for the last 5 years on the energy operating and the capital budget. talks about the debt service that we incurred each year and the cash available for capital. This was just for information only, but we wanted everyone to have that comparison so we can see the trend in what we've been doing over these past 5 years, because I think we've been serving 3 of those 5 years already as a group. And that would complete my portion of the summary overview, and I'll call on the committee members that are here to see if they have additional comments, and that would be Mr. McFadden. Would you have any additional comments?
No, I think you did an excellent job
Thank you.
making the presentation.
Mr. Perez?
Yes. During the subcommittee meeting, I asked several questions. One of them was regards to the, I guess you would call it a revenue over expense. And there were a good part of the expense way over the what you needed for expenditures, I think by $34-35 million thereabouts, and most of it came from the ECA factor. And then the first thing I didn't ask about, I'm going to ask it now. What factor are you using? Whose formula are you using to come up with that? Are you using your own or using the board's formula?
Or the ECA rate? Well, my understanding, that's still a point of negotiation and discussions with the board as regards to the exact formula and how that's being calculated. Sandra, sorry? Well, it hasn't changed, but the exact formula is still being discussed.
Right. The formula has remained the same since it was revised back in 2002. At this stage and budgeted for next year, we've assumed that it still remains fixed at 5.01 until the board takes further action or gives staff further direction. The CFO is working with the board and coming up with some recommendations. But this budget includes an assumption that it remains fixed at 501.
Okay. But then also for the use of those funds, does it still remain the same?
Yeah, nothing.
Any excess over?
Well, it would be at the discretion. I think what you're asking, make sure I understand it, is that if we collected more funds in the ECA than we had fuel and purchase power cost, how those funds would be utilized. And what the CFO has said essentially is that is at board direction. It's at their discretion to tell us how they would like us to utilize those funds. The board has the ability legally to make a decision to utilize those funds in funding capital or operations, so it's their discretion. At this point, we haven't talked about the 2011.
I think you better take a look at that again, because based on my recollection, when I first got involved with this committee, that was one of my concerns with Mrs. Fontaine at that time, that those funds were being utilized to fund fixed assets, to purchase a fixed assets as opposed to purchase power. And that's not what those funds were. When the law was enacted, it was enacted to use for the purchase of fuel, for energy and what have you, but not to utilize to take care of what the base rate should take care of. And that's my concern, that these funds are not being utilized to take care of the fixed assets, which should come out of the base rate.
And that is a discussion that the board is having at this time. There are ongoing discussions with the CFO to bring something back that will do just that.
Yeah. Okay, well, as long as they stay within, I believe it's in the state law that requires them to do that, isn't it?
My understanding
That's
is...
my understanding of it. Yeah.
My understanding is that it's not in the state law, that according to their regulation, they would act within the approved policy, but that having an ECA does not restrict the board from making a decision to utilize those funds for another purpose.
Well, then it's a board policy that they've used them for fuel and energy purchases and not for fixed assets, although they have.
And that's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah. Because San Juan, that's what they used to purchase San Juan. San Juan power unit over there with SCAPA.
Right. We pay SCAPA for fuel and purchase power, so that's why it's included in the ECA calculation when we were previously actually performing the calculation, and it is considered an ECA eligible cost. because we don't own that unit. That unit is not an asset of the IID. We purchase power from SCAPA, and SCAPA, as a joint power authority, they own the actual unit and sell the power to IID.
But aren't we in partnership with SCAPA?
Well, that's going into a legal discussion, and essentially,
Mr. Perez, SCAPA is the owner of San Juan. We have no ownership rights whatsoever. The way that SCAPA financed the purchase is that it entered into a take-or-pay contract with IID, among others. And we must pay a certain amount each month, whether or not SCAPA, San Juan actually produces. So each month we pay SCAPA, in round numbers, $4 million. Hopefully, San Juan is producing and we get 100 megawatts of capacity delivered and associated energy delivered to us. But it doesn't matter whether or not it produces or not, we're going to give SCAPA $4 million. The other entities, the other participants, make up their share of roughly $7.8 million per month. So that almost $100 million gets paid by the SCAPA participants to SCAPA, then SCAPA uses it to retire the debt, plus other operating costs. But we are not an owner of SCAPA, of San Juan, nor are we an owner of Palo Verde, the other SCAPA project, nor are we an owner in Parker Davis, our other long-term purchase. The only generation assets that the district owns are those at the El Centro steam plant, our internal generation, Rockford, what used to be Brawley, and the other generation facilities within the district. But we are not a partner nor an owner of San Juan or Palo Verde. We're a purchaser.
Okay, thank you.
And other than that, that would conclude our questions and comments with respect to the subcommittee meeting we had, unless Chairman Alsup would like to add anything to that. We don't have a recommendation for this body. Obviously, this is going to come again next month to the full committee. So,
But I have some more questions.
Oh, you have more questions?
Well, I've looked at on page G10. Now, this big document, at least on the one I had, I have the old one, not the new one. It's where they have the percentage of overhead being charged off to different energy and water. I think that the executive part, at least most of it, is backwards. In other words, they have, in G10, they have the water being charged 25% all the way down, with the exception of the occupational health nurse, and the energy with 75%. The board, and just about everybody there, spends about 98 to 75% on water, yet the electrical energy is being charged that big amount. I think the board needs to take a look at that. I think it's being just they should swap it, 75-25.
How did we come with those allocations? Is that standard for years?
Prior to 2007, there was actually an allocation study that was done each year. So the Chief Financial Office would work with all the centralized, centralized service units and go in and look at the activities actually being performed and analyze how much of the work they were doing was for water versus energy department. In approximately 2007, we had a new Chief Financial Officer, and the decision was made to change the allocation to, for the most part, 25% water and 75% energy. And I believe with the exception of the Human Resources Department and IT, which they're still done based on, Human Resources is based on actual staffing in the departments, and IT is based on the functions that they're performing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, he may be the chief financial officer, but he's not realistic in the actual what the board and the other people are doing. I mean, this is all political. I've been in those board meetings where they decide what the heck they're going to do. I think that's totally wrong. I mean, he has to do whatever the board tells him. We don't have to accept it. I think And unless some of the board committee members here may agree with me, some of these costs are way out of whack. The water should be charged a little, much more than they're being currently charged, especially with the what do you call that overhead, the internal overhead?
G&A overhead allocation. Gil, why don't we do this? Why don't we just add that to our current staff report, which is what ultimately we will be sending to the board as another area of concern?
Well,
We ask that staff and the board have a discussion on the allocation of executive and finance centralized services, is what we're talking about, right?
right. And I will mention that during the next year, hopefully this year, we'll be looking at, or I'm going to be working on a project, and one of the pieces of this project is to look at our allocation of costs and to do something more based on actual costs formulas rather than set percentages, because those percentages have been in place since around 2007. So we'll be looking at that and see how reasonable those are.
Or at least enlighten us on what the nexus is.
Right.
Is the nexus that the Energy Department requires more of a think tank because of our growth, or what is what is the philosophy behind this?
Right.
Help us understand. And Gil, you have more questions?
Yeah. On the budget?
Yeah, on the budget.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask, what are you going to do with the excess of revenue over energy expenses, the surplus?
Right now, it's going into our general fund, and it's up to my understanding would be the board that would determine, does it go into some type of rate stabilization? Is it used for funding capital projects? I mean, I don't know if we have any, right now it's just going into the general fund.
Unrestricted.
So,
But is it
unrestricted,
supposed to be
correct.
kept separate, because especially the one that's being generated by the ECA factor?
Right now, it's not being segregated out. So, go
Mentioned
ahead.
the 53 that we did set aside in 2009.
There was, I understand there's 53 million that was set aside in 2009 into the rate stabilization,
That is
correct?
restricted.
But that's been since 2009. Now, nothing additional has been placed in the rate stabilization
Well,
fund.
shouldn't all of it be in the,
But, well, there's a lot of theoretical questions going on about exactly how that ECA is calculated and what costs are going to be funded by the ECA rate versus, what are fixed costs, what are our variable costs, and there's different theories on what costs should be covered. So that's something that the board is still working on with Mr. Brokin.
are they going to be addressing that tomorrow?
I don't believe there's any plan for looking into that tomorrow.
So historically, do they make this year annually at the time that they approve the budget, or when do they make the decision as to where those funds will be allocated or
Go ahead.
or piggy banked?
This came up earlier, I think, Mr. Perez, when you were asking about what happens to the quote over collection. The action taken by the board was to establish a rate stabilization fund. The $53 million was from 2009, but the expectation is that it could go up to $100 million, and they do track it that way. So I think that tomorrow, when this item comes before the board, even though there is a resolution and it's ostensibly for action, there's an expectation that, at least on the board's part, that they won't take action and that they'll wait to hear from this body and the water advisory group as well.
Well, that gets back to what I was saying initially, that the excess funds should go to the rate stabilization factor.
Mr. Perez, the question is what goes in. Remember that there is a formula to calculate the ECA component. In 2006, 2007, that was fixed to the 5.01. It's never been unfrozen. The board is working right now with the CFO to come up with a new ECA. When that goes into effect, then you're correct. You would have a base rate component that was fixed, and the district would manage its energy supply or energy utility activities within that base rate. And then the ECA would pick up variations in the power supply budget. But because, one, it was done before any of the current team was here, secondly, it's been frozen for so many years that we haven't been able to go back and really determine what it was back in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2006. We don't know. Okay, you can say what you want. There's a formula there, but nobody knows how that was calculated during that time period. Okay, Mr. Broking and I have been playing with it. Rather than go back and worry about what should it have been in 2007, 2008, what we're suggesting is don't worry about it. We have put $53 million in the rate stabilization account, come up with a new ECA going forward, and work going forward rather than looking backwards.
Well, let me tell you how you can resolve that problem about the past years. Mrs. Fontaine is still available. I'm sure if you call her, she will be more than happy to come over here and show you what she was doing at that time. And I think she came down at one time and showed staff how to go about and compute the...
It doesn't matter. We know what the formula is, but what each clerk, what each administrative person actually said goes into there, we haven't a clue. Right? So there's a number there. Okay, we've gone back, we've come up with it, people don't like the results. Okay, we can play with it.
Okay, Marion, what we're going to do is we're going to add another paragraph to our staff report.
But we are working on an ECA right now.
Out of ECA?
And when the board accepts the ECA, then going forward, that's how we'll collect it. And we are generating a surplus right now, which you call profit, which we call necessary for our capital.
Well, I call it revenue over expense, not profit.
But we can still use, we're not collecting enough to fund all of our capital budget. Okay, that we have tremendous capital expenditures that if we have a, quote, profit, unquote, and remember, we never have profit because we're a nonprofit organization, we can use that money to pay off or preclude us from having to get additional debt. For example, El Centro 3, here's a $250 million project. If we took our profit and used it to pay down or expense what should be long-term debt, and as we talked about in the meeting, it is not equitable, a term that Mr. McFadden likes. It's not equitable to request that a ratepayer today fund all capital projects that are going to be benefiting people for the next 30 years. Those projects should be paid for out of a debt so that the recipients of the benefits are actually paying for it. Mm-hmm. But if we have a profit, again, with quotes about it, the board could make two choices, or actually three. First choice, put it into the rate stabilization account. That's what we did with our excess last year, or the majority of it. Okay, not all of it, but the majority of it. Or the board could decide, put some of it into the rate stabilization account and some of it to pay down capital to reduce our future borrowing requirements. There's a third thing that we don't want to talk about that the board could also do, but because that would be bad. Okay, but we do have those alternatives, and it's up to the board to decide at the end of the year, we have this much money, here's what we're going to do with it.
Okay, Marion, our paragraph is going to say that we, the committee, encourage staff to continue these discussions with the board to identify and to, I don't want to use the word earmark, but to designate the funds that are accrued from year to year revenue over expenditures, and to come up with not only to identify how those funds have been calculated, but to program how in the future they want to program them to the appropriate either rate stabilization or whatever. We just want it.
Madam, aren't you just asking that the board conclude its negotiations and establish an ECA?
Well, that's fine. But we were encouraged them to figure this out because it's an area of concern for Gil this year and it was last year and the year before. So the sooner we find resolution, the sooner we can focus on the future.
Oh, the other question I have regarding those reserves, how long will it take, or what is the plan of the board to do with getting up to the $100,000 rate stabilization fund?
We don't speak for the board, sir.
What?
We do not speak for the board.
I know that, but I mean, what have they said?
Okay, so included in the paragraph would be,
They have given us any timetables.
No, they've given the direction that they wanted a target established, and we will have to determine as an organization how we meet that target in the future. As you looked at the reserves, our actual versus our targets are looking pretty good for the majority of them. Where we don't have the reserves is in the capital replacement program, and so that will be at the discretion of the board.
so along with our staff report, Marion, are you going to send this little chart that we have that Sandra just referred to?
You want me to put that in the memo?
Yeah. Just put it in there that we took a look at our policy for the individual reserves and where we're at, and we asked that, the board either establish or have staff inform us on what the plan is to meet the policy for rate stabilization and capital reserve. Because the others are pretty close or on target, right? Okay, Gil. ¿Qué más?
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't say did anyone else have anything. Were you through?
Because I have another one.
Don't stop now.
The ECA factor was supposed to generate X number of dollars to cover the cost of all these purchases and what have you. It seems to me that in the past, when they got there and they exceeded that, Mr. Cloak, they did put it, before you came, before you guys came, they did put in a separate account. At least that's what Mrs. Fontaine told me. Let me finish. And they used to give the ratepayer back credit on their bills to work down those revenues down to where to zero, and then they start raising it or whatever, adjusting it accordingly. They did that. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never seen that because everything goes somewhere that disappears.
You can have it.
All right, I'm not going to talk for the board on what it did before I got here. Okay. The way an ECA is supposed to work, and can I just make a simple example? You have 5 cents base rate, 5 cents ECA. But so we'll move the 5 cents of the base rate away, and so now you have 5 cents ECA. That is a perspective number. That's what we're anticipating our power supply costs are going to be over some time into the future, whether it's a month, quarter, year, whatever, there. But now we'll say they come in at 4 cents. Okay? So now we have an extra penny. Where does that penny go? Currently, with the way that we're set up with the rate stabilization account, today, that 1 cent goes off into the rate stabilization account, and we keep the ECA at 5 cents. Eventually, if our power supply costs went up to 6 cents, then we would pull from the rate stabilization account and draw the rate stabilization account down so that the actual cost the ratepayer paid was 5 cents. Is everybody comfortable with my example so far?
Yes.
Mr. Prez? Okay. Where the problem and under our current budget, come 2013, 2014, that is what is going to happen. That in that time period, our expected revenues from our current level of rates will not cover our anticipated expenditures. At that point, we're going to start pulling out of the rate stabilization account in order to keep the rates at 10 cents, in my example, for those 2 years, or at least to mitigate the rate impacts. Okay, there's still rate increases in 2013, 14, or 14, 15? 13, 14. But we have this $53 million that would be used to pay it down. Hopefully, okay, between now and 2013, 2014, that account will go up and we'll have more money in which to stabilize. But if the rate goes down, we're not going to give you a credit per se. We're not going to say, gee, it is 4 cents, at least under the current proposals. The board could change this, and this is one of the things that they're looking at. That if we anticipate 5 cents and it comes in at 4, rather than take that extra penny and put it in the rate stabilization account, to now, next quarter, charge you 4 cents. That creates a real problem in terms of rate volatility. Because what will end up happening is this month you're paying 9 cents, the next month you're paying 13 cents, the next month you're paying 8 cents, next month you're paying 15 cents. So what the purpose of a rate stabilization account, by keeping the money here, is to keep your rate per kilowatt hour stable. Okay? That is this recommendation at this time. The board can change it. The board could say, if we came up with a good ECA program that was understandable. I mean, we went through this with the ECA last year, where people kept saying that putting an ECA in was equivalent to a rate increase. Even though the ECA and the base rate equaled the current rate, everyone was saying that's a rate increase. It wasn't, but understanding how an ECA is calculated is a difficult process. So by looking for a stable rate for as long as we can, the ECA should work, and some of the proposals that are out there, and believe me, there is no consensus on how the ECA is going to be calculated ultimately. But some of the consensus where some of the proposals would put all the onus on the power supply manager, that he would be responsible for maintaining the power supply cost, and in a sense, the ECA would become his problem. Others are to look at dividing it up into some portion of capital and non-capital. Or debt, non-debt for generation resources. But it hasn't been resolved. What has been resolved is, to the extent that the district makes money, the board policy is we're going to try to put $100 million in a rate stabilization account that is restricted, okay, that can only be used at the direction of the board to maintain stable rates for a stable ECA, the stable energy component of the rate going forward. Okay? And I'm saying that all with all due respect to the board members who are here, because this is how I understand it, and if they change their mind, then I'm wrong.
But doesn't that bring to light the same question you raised earlier, in that consumers of tomorrow should pay for capital improvements of tomorrow? Doesn't that then give the consumer of tomorrow a cheaper rate when I, the consumer for the past decade, have been paying into the rate stabilization and they haven't? I'm not arguing your point, because I know it's a very tricky calculation that we have to finesse and figure out what's the best way to approach.
And generally, rate stabilization accounts don't go for 30 years. Generally, a rate stabilization account will stay in the place for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and are constantly readjusted in an attempt to maintain, at least as long as possible, a stable rate. And from a consumer's point of view and a business's point of view, knowing that you have rate stability in an era of increasing volatility in the power supply markets, well, an example of that, wouldn't you like to know that your gasoline prices are going to be fixed at $2.75 for the next, well, keep it at $3 for the next 3 years? Some months you're going to be overpaid. Price will drop down to $2.95, $2.90. Other months you're going to be underpaid. But for the vast majority of people, the rate will balance out in a relatively short period of time.
So is the current policy for the rate stabilization capped at $100 million, so that theoretically, if we do reach $100 million in reserves, then the ECA rate goes away?
That's the current policy, but the board could move to increase that
Yeah, but
if that became an issue.
But that's where we're at right now.
Right now, that's where we're at.
Wait, I'm not sure. It is capped at $100 million, but
Right.
the ECA would not go away.
Oh, so they just, they would just,
The ECA,
They would just
you'd
push the
still
money
keep
somewhere
a
else.
10-cent rate. Suddenly, we're generating money in excess of $100 million. The board would have to decide, and it's a pleasant problem for the board to have, that we have so much money and all our reserve accounts are where we want to be. What do we want to do? I think it is a problem the board would love to address.
yeah, okay.
Sorry about that, Dave.
Gil, did you have another question?
No, I just, I have, but I could,
He's getting tired. Jump in, Mr. Boehner, before he asks another question. Does anyone have any questions after hearing the discussion that we've had? Mr.
I just have one. With the 100 million, after your comments right now, we have 2 years to get that up to 100 million. It should be up there by 2014. That's what I'm understanding. Because to me, that's a sense of urgency that we need to get 25 million in there now, another 25 million, to get there.
My own guess, looking at the rates, is that it would be unlikely that we get to the full $100 million, given what's going on with El Centro 3. And when we move to the next item on the agenda, we'll talk about El Centro 3. But if power costs stay where they are for the next couple of years, in 2011 and 2012, and the board moves the excess or the profit, and again, I qualify that, the excess revenues, then we could. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily what the board is going to do with this extra dollars. Again, that's the board's decision, not staff's.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, we've been having a lengthy discussion on the budget. Up until this point, we didn't have a quorum, so we weren't going to vote. But just for your information, at the last ECAC meeting that we had in La Quinta, we appointed a subcommittee to meet, 2 people from El Centro Imperial Valley and 2 people from Coachella Valley, to both go to the study sessions that the board had on the budget and then to meet together to go over the budget and raise any questions that we needed additional information from staff on. In front of you, you should have the staff report that kind of gives an outline of what we discussed and what the areas for discussion were. And this evening, Gil had about 4 or 5 additional questions that he wanted staff to enlighten us on.
Okay.
Most of the questions that Gil had tonight were related to the ECA rate, and that's where we're at right now. We were finishing up that conversation. I'm not sure if you've had time to go over the budget, or if you had additional questions or needed additional information from staff before we considered this.
I'm ready for...
Oh, you're ready, okay. So does anyone else on the board have any meetings of the questions of the subcommittee? No? Okay. Chairman Elsip, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Lupe. Very good job. Yeah, go ahead.
May I say
Dave.
something, sir? You said next month, Ms. Ramos-Watson. Well, we don't expect, and we are recommending against any board vote tomorrow until they hear back from both the ECAC, from the ECAC and the WCAB, Water Advisory Board. I don't believe that we want to wait until January for a recommendation from the board.
No, we don't
from the
either, but we
commission.
didn't know if we'd be able to vote on it until Mr. Anderson.
Okay, we're not, if the committee wants to vote tonight, that's fine. If you want to wait and schedule another committee meeting in either next week or the following week so that we can get something back, we don't believe that the board is going to move that quickly. Again, that's up to the board. It's not up to staff, but we know that we are not recommending, even though it's on the agenda, we are not recommending that the board move forward with a recommendation tomorrow until it has input from yourselves and from the WCAB. So just for your
Would you like to have another meeting, say, one day next week? Gil would like to have one.
Gil needs more information?
yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I'm good. I'm good, I'm fine.
And he hasn't even looked at the budget.
No, he says he's ready.
Is it ready?
Yeah. He's ready. He's born ready.
Miriam, can you get a special meeting of this same committee, say, next Wednesday, Thursday, whatever's convenient for I'm flexible.
Mr. Chair, is that an action item, and do we have a consensus of all 11
Pardon?
for an additional meeting? Do we have consensus for?
I think he's talking
an
about the
additional meeting?
subcommittee, Brad.
Yeah, it's
For the
a subcommittee.
Basically, what he's saying is that we're going to defer voting on the recommendation to the board on the budget until there's an additional subcommittee meeting for Mr. Gil Perez to have more information on the ECA.
And then that will be brought back in January, I believe it is, before their January meeting at our meeting.
A point of order, wouldn't we need to vote on this? It's an action item, we have a quorum.
Right, we have a quorum, and there could be a motion to move the budget forward with the so noted recommendations that we have thus far, or we can move to wait until after Mr. Perez has additional meeting.
I would make a motion that we move forward with the budget approval as presented with the recommendations from the ECAC.
Okay.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Kelly, can we bring this back into a quorum meeting and vote?
What are we voting for? What did he say? What did he say? I didn't hear.
He wants to go ahead and vote.
Go ahead and vote for the approval.
I'm going to go out on a limb as a non-lawyer and say yes.
Yeah, once you have a quorum, you can go.
I'd rather you were on that limb than myself, but I think you can. Okay. I will declare this back as a legal or quorum meeting, and we have a motion made by Brad and seconded by Steve over there to go ahead with the recommendations that was presented tonight and present them to the board tomorrow.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with this, Gil?
For me?
Yes, if we were going to vote to approve now.
I'm not going to vote for it. I'm going to be against it.
And the motion, just for clarification, is to move forward.
We have a motion.
I want to find out, what are you going to tell the board on their letter, that, the recommendations, or what are you going to tell them on the letter, or is that to the CIS committee, or are you going to send that to the board?
This staff report that was in front of your desk that I was reading off of in the beginning is what would go to the board with the additions of their work.
With the additional recommendations that this
Yeah.
body made during the informational period.
Right, during the informational period.
Now that we have a quorum, we can move those forward.
And if you need those repeated, Marion has them jotted, the additional items.
There were
that-
several items that we
that were
wanted
added.
to clarify.
The three topics were the ECA, the formula for the G10, and looking at the reserve policy with the two areas that we need further to see how we're going to meet those last two areas.
Can you get this to the board for the meeting tomorrow by 1?
Yes, we can.
Okay. You had a question?
I just wanted to, you were asking for some information before you felt that this would be a budget you'd want to vote for. But we're kind of in a time constraint, so I'm just wondering how to deal with that.
Well, they're not going to vote on it tomorrow.
No, but I was understanding Mr. Pope to say that he didn't want us to wait until January.
No, I very much hope that the board takes action on the budget before January. Okay, again, that's a board decision. I also hope that the board waits until we have ECA recommendation and WCAB recommendation. And we know the WCAB does not meet till Thursday. But if the ECAC determines that it wants to wait till January, then the board will probably have acted by then and
Without the recommendation.
without the recommendation. So if the board is, and I do not want to pressure you, please do not take that as you have to do something. Just if you want an input and you choose not to vote tonight, then the board is going to have a quorum probably next week. Again, it depends on how quickly the board of directors decides to go forward with the budget. But I would not wait until December 23rd to meet again.
Well, let's call for the question because we have a motion and a second on the floor and see if that is successful or not before we have further discussion.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Two objections. Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You're looking over the wrong place, but it's okay. Roy, is it possible that we could ask Marion to, when she sends her copy to the board, that she also sends it to the members of the committee?
Can you do that, Mary?
I would even go further than that. I would have her work with Mrs. Ramos Watson to make sure that it meets the goals of the ECAC before it is publicized.
The spirit of the conversation. Okay.
Okay, I want to make sure that since there's some language in there that's still fuzzy, that the ECAC has a chance to review it before it gets presented to the board.
I think that, I was going to suggest that maybe the budget committee could look it over, just what you're saying. Is that a motion that we need to make and before and
No,
go
ma'am.
on their
I don't think so.
recommendation?
No, we'll send it out to the budget
Motion's
committee.
already been made and voted.
I know.
So you will do that? Okay, because I do not want anything prepared by staff on behalf of the committee and say this was approved by the committee.
You got that, Miriam?
The next board meeting is Monday, the 13th, so that you don't, completely feel jammed, and so that Marion has sufficient time to flesh this out. Could you, you can defer sending it to the board for tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah.
I think so.
On the basis that
Because they're not going to vote on it. We don't suspect
I mean,
them to.
I'm prejudging now, but I don't think that the board will take action tomorrow.
I've talked to some of them. I don't think they're looking at.
Staff can
trying
just
to
let them know
pass it
that
That would
along.
give you an extra several days, and Marion.
And you'll just let them know tomorrow night that it's coming in the
Because
next-
what you're talking about are guidelines, essentially, that the ECAC wants considered in that board vote.
Okay, since we're now then back into a meeting, it was quorum, do we go back, can we go back and approve the minutes so it won't be carried to next time? Has everyone read the minutes? Motion to accept?
So moved.
I make the motion to accept the minutes. Second?
We had a move.
All right.
Go back and make another motion and a second.
I think so now that we have a quorum.
We approve them.
I second.
Voting on the minutes.
Oh,
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman,
this moment.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, just for clarification, I have an issue that I wanted to bring up on the subcommittee. Are we going to meet or not meet?
We're not meeting,
Or not meeting, okay.
no, but the narrative will go to the subcommittee members before it goes to the board.
Okay, do I have to get permission to add an issue on there? Because I wanted to talk about outreach, but I will get together with Kevin Kelly before.
It's already on our sheet, but you can add to it.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Excuse me, we're going to be able to review what's going to be written
Before it goes to the board.
before it goes to the board, right?
Right.
yeah, yes. Start out, Henry. You finally made it up, somebody.
Henrik Olstowski, Assistant Manager Generation for IID. We're going to be giving a quarterly update to the ECAC tonight, and when I say we, it's actually Mr. Joe Gatlin, who I'd like to introduce. We've been asked by a couple of people whether it was an intentional color coordination in our shirts tonight. For the record, I wanted to make sure that it was not.
Is that your brother?
Again, Joe's the project manager for the El Centro Unit 3 Repower project, and Joe came on board on this project in April of this year, and prior to coming to the project, Joe recently ended a 35-year career at Fluor Corporation, and Fluor Corporation is a large architectural engineering firm, and he was a project manager for 35 years there, working on power plant, refinery, and offshore platform type projects. Also, Joe has a BS in mechanical engineering from the Naval Academy, and he has a master's in naval architecture from MIT. And I guess with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Joe to make this presentation.
Thank you, Henrik, and good evening. I'll try to keep this simple, and if you have any questions, certainly don't hesitate to ask. This is what we call a computer-generated screenshot. It's a term we use out of our model that shows what the project will look like. It's a 3D CAD that all the engineering firms use now to engineer and design their projects. I won't say too much. When we talk about HRSGs, the heat recovery steam generators, those are the green box-looking things in the background, and in the foreground are the two gas turbines. That's sort of purple, and there's a lot of little boxes or modules that go with each gas turbine.
What are those green things standing up there?
So good.
The green.
That's the HRSG, heat recovery steam generator. That's the gas turbine, of course, generates heat when it burns that fuel gas that we were talking about earlier, and then that hot gas is exhausted and goes through the HRSG, which is basically a boiler, a waste heat boiler that captures that heat and converts water into steam. And the steam is what we use to power the steam turbine generator, which is not shown in this picture. But this project, we're replacing the steam turbine with the new steam turbine that's more efficient. And so that's what we use the steam for.
Well, are the turbines also generating power?
Yes, yeah, that's a very good question. We call this a combined cycle cogeneration. I mean, that's the technical term for it. So yes, the two gas turbines each generate power, and the steam turbine generates power. So it makes it a very efficient plant.
The steam goes inside the plant and.
Yes, sir. Exactly. It goes inside the turbine building.
The other.
Yeah, it turns there's a big turbine and
the generator.
Yes, and it powers a generator, and then after that steam exhausts through all the blades of the steam turbine, it goes through several stages. Then that steam exhausts into a condenser, and as the name implies, we have cold water that's on one side of the tube and steam on the other side, and that steam condenses into water, and then we pump that water back to the heat recovery steam generator and start all over again. So it's a closed cycle. You do have to add some water, but that's sort of a detail. But it makes it a very efficient plant by doing that. That's so. Some of the projects that IID have are a simple cycle where they don't have the HRSG and they don't have the steam turbine. This is a combined cycle.
That's what the unit number one is, isn't it? The single cycle, or what are you going?
No, unit number 1, you're talking about the old unit, the El Centro?
Yeah, here.
Unit 1 has been demolished, hasn't it, Henry?
Just real quick, El Centro Unit 1 was retired back in the 90s. And
Pardon?
El Centro Unit 1 was retired back in...
What's that turbine doing over here to the north side of where those are going to be?
That's El Centro Unit 2.
Huh?
El Centro Unit 2.
Unit 2. I don't know the number of the deals.
Yeah. Okay, that's a combined cycle too.
Is it combined cycle?
Yeah. Nylon, the Nylon project is simple cycle. It doesn't have any gas turbines. Okay. So these are the sort of the things we want to talk about tonight. As I say, I'll try to keep it simple. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to shoot away. I hope you have this package in front of you, because I realize you can't read that very well. I won't talk too much about the things that have already happened. I'll go down to the foundation work. As you can see, we started in late November on the foundations, and they're pouring what we call the mud mat right now for the HRSGs and gas turbines, and then we call the power block. That's where all this equipment, that slide I should have pointed out, showed all most of the power block equipment that slide 2 slides ago. And so we're now starting the foundation work, and we should actually finish the gas turbine and steam turbine foundations right before Christmas. That's our goal. You see that the initials ARB, that's IID's contractor that we've engaged. And they've subcontracted the engineering to a firm up in Sacramento, California, Worley Parsons. And you can see that they're actually slightly ahead of schedule as of the end of October, 31.8% versus 31.5%. Siemens is our equipment supplier. They're supplying the gas turbine, steam turbines, gas turbine, steam turbine, HRSGs, the major equipment, and they're on or ahead of schedule for all of their contractual deliveries. We'll start some switchyard and transmission work in the first quarter of next year. And we started demolition of some of the existing equipment, and actually are almost complete with that effort. And the punchline here is that you want to take away is that generally we're on or ahead of schedule.
Is the old unit already taken off?
I'm sorry?
The old furnace, what are you going to call it?
The old boiler? No, it's still standing. The Unit 3 boiler. We did demolish the stack. We've got some issues with asbestos material inside that boiler, so we're trying to make an assessment there on how far we want to take that. We frankly were surprised to find that material.
Be able to take it out, or you're going to have to leave it there standing?
Well, it depends what the price is going to be. How much it's going to cost to take it down. If we have to abate that material.
Leave it there, then what are you going to do?
Well, we'll just design around it. I mean, we've already got a design based on the fact that the boiler was not going to come out, so we don't need that space. I mean, certainly it would be an advantage to take it out.
Can I just, on El Centro Unit 2, as with El Centro Unit 3, we finished El Centro Unit 2, and the unit went in service, the repower unit went in service before we ever took the boiler down. So the boiler's not going to affect our schedule on putting El Centro 3 online.
Sorry, maybe I didn't understand the question.
Did I read someplace that those 2 stacks, existing stacks, will be removed?
Well, we've already taken. There was only 1 stack in question, and that was already been demolished.
Okay, I just wondered if that was both of them or if it was one of them.
Yes, sir, just one.
You answered part of the question if it's feasible.
Oh yes, it's we took it down safely.
Yeah.
As opposed to that project in Cleveland where they miscalculated. I know this has got a lot of detail on this slide. All you need to know about taking away from this is that At standard temperature and condition, we call ISO conditions, the plant will put out 144 megawatts. That's a net increase of exactly 100 megawatts over the existing plant. So we'll add 100 megawatts to the El Centro generating station. And I think 100 megawatts is about, what, 75,000 homes? That a good rule of thumb, Henrik, something like that? That's a number I've always heard, something that order of magnitude. So that's what you'll be adding to your portfolio. I think as I heard mentioned, the project is basically a $250 million project, of which we have $10 million in contingency. We've not used any of that contingency, and we frankly don't expect to. So that we're actually controlling the project to the $238 million. And our actual expenditures through the end of October were $68 million, which is about $5 million less than the cash flow curve that we have constructed.
Joe, are you saying there haven't been any change orders?
Oh, no, there have been change orders, but we've got we've got budgets for that. I think industry standard. I think ID uses industry standard change orders. Like I call them a mech and spec allowance. Yes, we do have that, but we don't expect to use that contingency. And there you can see our cash flow curve for the project. I know we've got a lot of detail on this, so I won't say too much, except that as I mentioned, the Siemens is our power block supplier, and the gas turbines are being fabricated in Sweden. The gas turbines in Sweden, the steam turbines in Germany, and the major components of the heat recovery steam generator are being fabricated in Thailand. They started fabrication of all those components except the steam turbine, which will start fabrication in January.
Is anything being fabricated in the United States?
Well, yes. They're actually the what we call the DCS, the distributed control system. The computer that's sort of the heart of the project that runs the project is being fabricated in Georgia, and many of the components are being fabricated in the U.S. For example, the boiler feed water pumps, Salzer boiler feed water pumps. The high pressure pumps are coming from Portland, Oregon. And the power distribution center, that's our electrical module with all of our switchgear in it. That's probably be fabricated in Houston. That's just a guess, but so a lot of the equipment will be fabricated in the U.S. Besides, just an editorial comment, GE needs some competition, so.
Well, it seems, people are hurting for jobs in the United States, and yet we're shipping them all out of the United States.
Well, I can't really speak to that except to say that, then GE needs to figure out a way to do it more efficiently so they can have a bit of competitive price against Siemens. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of what I would tell anybody. It's a world economy out there. We are using a lot of local labor, of course, so El Centro is certainly getting a lot of benefit. Here's some of the major milestones. Once again, I won't spend a lot of time on this. The next major milestone is completion of the demolition by December the 24th. We frankly probably will miss that a couple of weeks, but it's far from being on the critical path of the project, so I'm not too worried about that. The gas turbines, I saw today a report where they're going to start shipping the gas turbines in mid-March from Sweden, so we'll probably get those about a month early if they hold to schedule. Mr. Perez, also the condenser, I failed to mention that's being fabricated in Pittsburgh, so should address some of your concerns. The the three components there, the condenser, the steam turbine subskid, that's STG, steam turbine generator subskid, and the steam turbine, those are the three critical components. We need those three components to really finish out the project. That's the ones that sort of keep me awake at night. Current activities, we've had a number of issues with the steam turbine, subskid, and condenser. That they're all installed as a unit, and as we all know down here, El Centro is a highly seismic area, and we just about got that resolved. Probably have that finished, finalized by the right before Christmas. The second bullet, we've actually we've got a good general arrangement drawing out. We've got a good general arrangement that we can integrate into the design, so that's behind us. The next bullet, as I mentioned, the instrumentation and control system is coming from Georgia, and we should get that information lined out and find out exactly where we are in early January. They were shooting for a July 22nd delivery date to site, which is way early, which is good. Let's see. I won't really address any of the three items there. They're really. I don't think any of those three are going to really impact the project. Complete the hazardous material remediation, except for the Unit 3 boiler. They're pretty much done. They've we when we built this plant, they used a lot of asbestos, and we've got all that removed from the steam turbine building. Talked a lot about the steam turbine demolition. The last thing that they've got to take out is a generator, and it's having to take that apart piece by piece. The third bullet, grading and preparing the site, they're pretty much done on that. The fourth bullet, I mentioned the foundation installation is going well. Let's see. I mentioned the seismic engineering and the foundation design. So the last item are the piping and instrument diagrams may not be a familiar term to many of you, but those are like the key drawings on the project. Those are all the little, shows every valve, every instrument, every piece of equipment, and it's really the sort of the, call it the Bible of the engineering. It tells everybody how the plant operates, and we're just about there on that. And that's all I have, unless you have any more questions or comments.
Questions? Anyone?
Yeah, where did you say the main units are going to be built? In Thailand and Sweden?
The heat recovery steam generator modules, they come together and they're like a modular concept. Some of their steam drums are being fabricated in Thailand. In Sweden, Siemens is fabricating the gas turbines, and in Germany they're fabricating the steam turbine.
Yeah, and they can do it cheaper than we can here in the United States? Or is the companies just owned by those companies and they're shipping the stuff over there?
Oh, okay. Well, Siemens subcontracted the HRSG effort to a company called Vogt, which is a U.S. company, and Vogt has two shops in Thailand that fabricate the HRSGs for them. I can't really. I know generally Europe's a more expensive place to fabricate than the U.S.
That's what I thought.
But maybe I know Siemens. Frankly, Siemens is trying to crack this market in a big way, the U.S. market. And this is for this particular gas turbine and steam turbine. It was a good fit. I mean, Henry can probably address this better than I can.
Well, I just a lot of these decisions were made before Joe came on board, but for the power block, that was a competitively bid project. I mean, the component of this project, and we said, GE, give us your best shot, and we said, Siemens, give us your best shot, and really, for power plant, utility power plant sized equipment, you're either going to go to Siemens or you're going to go to GE. I mean, there's just not any other suppliers that you're going to want to buy equipment from. So it was a competitive bid process. It was evaluated by several people, several groups within IID, and we all came to the conclusion that Siemens had a better package. So, I mean, that's a little bit of history that Joe was not aware of. And like you said, I mean, the power business is an international business, and even GE, when they get equipment, they source equipment from all over the country or all over the world, and it'll come together in the United States. Some of their equipment will, and some of it won't. So that's just the reality of today's power equipment market.
My concern
subs
is
out some of their steam turbine generator fabrication to, I think it was Mitsubishi in Japan. So Henrik's correct. It's all over the world now.
well, you know, sometimes we get equipment that don't work when it gets here. We have a lot of problems with it.
You know, that would happen to a company one time, and I mean, that utility industry is not that big that word doesn't travel very fast. And my experience, and if somebody had trouble with a piece of equipment like this or a project like this, the word would get out really quickly, and it would really be very damaging to the company's reputation. They have a lot at stake at this.
Well, this company has had an experience where they I don't know whether they repaired or installed a new turbine, a new blade, and they were out of whack, you know. They were not properly positioned. And I think they were done somewhere outside of the United States. Yeah. That's my concern. And then we have to end up eating that doggone thing, you know, because they're the only providers. It just seems somebody should do something about that. Yeah.
Well, of course, we're buying the equipment with the guarantees. I mean, with the warranties, and well, since I've been on the project, I found Siemens very call it mindful, very aware that you know, this is their entree. You know, they don't have that many turbines over here, and they're really trying to do a good job. They want to maintain their reputation. I'm not a salesman for Siemens. They're trying to do a good job.
Any more questions?
I just have a question, and I'm not sure if you can answer it, but you talked about the construction benefits locally.
Yes.
What is, in your estimation, and maybe someone can tell me, what is the economic benefit on employment, goods, and services out of this project? I understand that this is one of the major projects in the Imperial Valley, but I'm just on the economic side, you know, of the benefits to Imperial County. You may not be the one, because I think you just came in.
Let me say one thing, then I'll turn over to Henrik. I have asked ARB to keep track, and Siemens too. I've asked both the major contractors in this job to keep track of local expenditures. Ed asked that question a long time ago, so we are keeping track of their. They have a lot of purchase orders and work orders, et cetera, with local suppliers. Go ahead, Henrik.
Well, just two things. One, I understand the construction count, I guess, is going to go up to a peak of 200. This is like an 18-month project, so the local construction, some of the constructors will be local, but I guess the contractor count will peak out at 200. Now, from an continuing operations, after the plant goes commercial, we're not hiring any additional people because this unit's replacing an existing unit. So we'll operate this plant. More so, it'll just keep people employed rather than create new operational jobs. And again, the construction will peak out about 200 people at the site.
Yeah. But are the people, the contractors that are doing the construction, are they local or are they from out of town?
It's a combination. They're using it's a union project, and ID signed what they call a project labor agreement. And to build a power plant in California today, you kind of have to, and if a power plant's over 50 megawatts, you kind of have to sign a project labor agreement. they're going to the local union halls to get these people. Now, the local union halls could be here, just depending on the craft. It could be here in Imperial Valley, or it could be in LA, or it could be in San Diego. So they go to the local union halls, but again, the local union hall may not quite be in Imperial Valley, but it's close by.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We'll move on down to number 7, I guess, election of officers. And I'd like for Miriam to handle this if she would.
At our last meeting, we had a nomination for Mr. Antonio Ortega to assume the role of the vice chairman. Would you like to call for a vote? I guess is what we would need to do on that.
I think I move that the nominations for the vice chair be closed and that we unanimously vote for Mr. Ortega, who's not here this evening, right? Scary.
He sends his apologies. He had a prior work commitment before joining the committee. Do we get a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Call for a vote?
No further questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
While you're up there, you can just give your part.
I just have a quick update to the committee. The IID Board of Directors approved the ECAC bylaw change that we proposed to them at our last meeting. We will have some members who will term out at this coming January. I'm in the process of sending communications out to all of the committee members and their nominating bodies, explaining the new terms. With the people that are terming out as of December, I'm asking that they would stay on until a replacement is found, since our time frame has been very short.
And up for reappointment?
Actually, it impacts Mr. Hernandez from Coachella, Ms. Franklin from the city of La Quinta, and Mrs. Broughton from the county of Riverside.
Not from here.
Actually, those would be 2 vacant seats, one that Mr. Ortega has just taking on, and another one that's in, I believe, Director Sanchez's. It's a vacant position.
That's a vacant position?
Correct.
Yeah, both of them are vacant.
Any other questions about your attendance report? I have changed that to show that the term dates are now consistent with what the ECAC recommended at our last meeting.
Are we finished with the election of officers?
Actually, Lupe, you become chair.
Automatically?
I believe so, yes.
I could do anything I want and they can't stop me?
Yes.
Is that why you guys gave me this thing tonight?
Yeah. Let's make it official. I'd like to move for the election of the vice chairman to chairman.
Thank you, Stephen.
Calling for a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Now,
All
Roy,
in favor?
your last thing, Roy.
Who seconded it? Nobody seconded
Nobody seconded?
Mr. McNicky
I
did.
thought somebody over here seconded.
Mr. McNicky did.
I did.
Oh, he seconded. I heard somebody. No, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did someone grunt?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Members' comments. And let's start over here. Nothing?
No comment. I have a comment or a question. I noticed we have the name of Ms. Walker for representing the city of Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage. Will she be at the next meeting?
Yes, I apologize. I forgot to mention that. Ms. Walker was appointed by the city of Palm Desert at one of their last meetings. It still is awaiting final ratification from the IID Board of Directors, but she should be on board for our January meeting.
She works for the city of Palm Desert.
Yes, and I believe in their energy management office. Yes, she does. She lives in Indio.
Mr. McFadden?
Mr. Chairman, 2 comments. One, I'd just like to congratulate Lupe on becoming the new chair. I'd like to also say that I'd like to have 2 items placed on the agenda for consideration next month. One is to create a grant committee from this committee. We talked a lot about grants at our last meeting, and I'd like to see us consider creating a subcommittee dealing with grants. The second one is there was a great deal of discussion that I was involved in regarding outreach. I'd like to see us consider creating an outreach committee. So there are 2 committees that I'd like to see us discuss at the next meeting, if possible, can be put on the agenda for consideration.
Okay, we'll check with staff to work with us on that.
You have that, Miriam? Okay. Gil?
Mr. Chairman, I have just one request. I've been asking you, and again, like Mr. Patton indicated, we used to have a subcommittee to work with staff on the public benefits items. And throughout the year, the last 4 or 5 years, it kind of went dormant or somehow it got ignored. I think we ought to reinstitute that subcommittee to work with staff in regards to what they propose for the benefit section, using benefits, public benefits monies. We used to have it, and somehow it got lost along the way.
We've never had that discussion, so it might be a good time to have it on all these committees. We've never talked about it.
And then, Lupe, I want to tell you that I won't give you that time.
That's why I have this. No. ¿Qué pasa, Gil?
Hold him to that, Lupe. Anything further?
Great tamales, thank you so much.
Lupe?
Thank you, everyone, for your vote of confidence this evening. I want to thank Roy for jumping in to an empty seat that he didn't expect to be filling this year. Did a great job, Roy. You jumped in there.
No, I didn't do a great job.
You did. You kept us moving. You didn't let us blink. You didn't let us hiccup, or you didn't let us run away either.
I know, but
So thank you very much.
This has been I've worked with committees, some of them 15 years that I ran committees, chairpersons, and this has been a disaster.
Oh.
As far as I'm concerned. I can do better than this.
And then I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention our
Thank you, Lupe.
2011 meeting schedule. We have our first meeting in January on the 3rd, which is a Monday after New Year's. So if anyone objects to that, we need to talk about it tonight. And then the only 2 meetings that are changing or deviating from the first Monday are the July meeting and the September meeting because of 4th of July and Labor Day. So just for your information.
I just was wondering if there is any other possibility besides the 3rd of January.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but.
Just because.
So how does everybody else feel?
I think we have such a hard time getting a quorum.
You guys okay?
I don't know.
I can probably be here. It's not for me, but I'm just worried that we have a lot of people that might be
The
tired.
staff will be here.
Well, we know that.
Well,
but
thank you.
does everyone think they'll be here?
I will be.
You think?
No, I see.
You think? Okay.
No,
well, then
you
we're
can't.
okay.
No, but you can't, right?
Well, we need 11.
I'll be here.
I won't.
You won't.
He can't be here, okay.
But we have 9 people that aren't here tonight.
Correct.
We'll change it.
So they should fill in.
We hope. Thank you, Roy.
Yeah.
Louis?
Yeah, Mr. Cole, is there any solar projects on the planning or permitting type in the Northern Calipat Island area? Any other ones?
You mean separate from the Sun Peak
Right.
solar?
Right.
Yes, there are, I believe, 7 at this time in the north of Brawley, Westmoreland, the northeast of that. I cannot tell you where they are. Just
Very good. Another thing, I just want to follow up on Gil's comment about public benefits. I think that our committee could be a good source of support for the board because, in the few comment that I've made before, and it started with me because I changed my air conditioners back in January, and I'm supposed to get $140 rebate. I only got $100. And who runs this department?
I do.
Oh.
And then you told us you had to, at the end of the year, you got to spend the whole money. Is there a law that you have to do, or can we help you run this department?
Well, right. Actually, I run it until Friday. So after Friday, we'll see who runs it. Do remember, though, right now you get double rebates and
What do
you
we
get
have
a
to do?
state rebate.
What do we have to do?
The district is providing double rebates on all, whatever rebates we have for energy efficiency equipment. Between now and the end of the year, we're doubling in an attempt to...
Equipment.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Energy efficient equipment.
HVAC, lighting, energy efficient windows, anything that qualifies under our rebate program.
Light bulbs?
Doors?
I don't think doors are covered currently.
Do freezers qualify?
Do what?
Freezers.
Yes, appliances.
Appliances.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Energy Star appliances, yes. Plus, many of them also qualify for additional state or federal tax rebate until December 26th, I believe.
How do you
Some of them
apply for those?
Excuse me, sir?
How do you apply for the federal part?
It's actually on our website, but we've been sending it out to people who ask. I'll forward the email to you tomorrow that shows how to get it. I'll forward it to Marion, and Marion can forward it to all members.
Okay.
But some of them begin expiring today, on December 6th. Well, some of them extend through the end of through December 26th. I don't know. That's a weird date to me, but that's when it is. So.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, Brad?
I'd just like to wish Lupe a happy 21st birthday tonight.
Oh, is this her 21st birthday?
Her 21st birthday.
Oh, old enough to go out now.
21st?
Yeah.
And she enjoyed the great dinner she had on her birthday.
Really?
Michael? Nothing? Okay. Myself, I'd like to thank everyone for thinking I did a good job. That was, I'll tell you. But I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight and some great presentations. And all of you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if all goes well, we'll see you on January the 3rd at La Quinta.
All right.
Thank you.